we fund the first deal that closes, they turn around, they sell it to the end buyer just back to back. And in most cases, we do it for a point or less.
Welcome to the Freedom Point Real Estate Podcast, where we talk about creating more time freedom through passive real estate investing. Passive investing in real estate challenges conventional investment wisdom. We are passionate about learning and sharing resources with others who are ready to transform their investing mindset. Quick disclaimer as always, I am not a CPA, I am not an attorney or a financial advisor. This is not financial advice, not telling you or anyone else what to do. The views and opinions expressed in these podcasts are provided for education and informational purposes only and are not necessarily the views of my employer. I'm glad you're here. Now let's dig in. All right, welcome back, Freedom Point podcast listeners. Thank you again for jumping into another episode of the Freedom Point. We're so glad you're here with us again today. I've got another amazing guest, Peter Russell. Peter, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to having a conversation with you. Just a little quick bio on Peter. He has 9 years of experience investing in real estate, founding a thriving wholesaling firm that's completed more than 500 transactions across multiple markets and grossing more than $90 million in total deal volume. Peter, if you could just kind of maybe give our listening audience a little bit more color, as it relates to kind of your background, your journey, what you're focused on today, et cetera.
Sure. Yeah. Going back to 9 years ago now, it's weird to think that it's been 9 years every year. I think it's just like 2 or 3 years. And then I'll go to an event or come on a podcast and I'm one of the OGs in the room at this point in time. So, I started out, I've been involved in real estate for, probably about 13, 14 years. I had my license as an agent way back in the day and just did traditional, taking somebody out to look at properties, listed a few properties, but just kind of dabbled in it part-time. I was always interested in the investing side of it, but I thought you had to have stacks of cash, a bunch of capital backing, a rich uncle, something like that to be able to get into flipping, that sort of thing. And then I found out, through actually an old contact, a guy I went to high school with, he was posting, this is probably 10 or 11 years now, he was posting Facebook, either recordings or he was going live, and he was in a small town outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. That's where I live. And he was giving like little snippets about wholesaling, like, hey, I'm getting this property under contract with like not that much down or a little bit of money in escrow. And I'm actually not even going to buy it and flip it. I'm just going to take it and be like kind of the middleman and sell it off to an investor cash buyer. In the first few times I was like, okay, interesting, but seems different. Not sure if it's legit or not, but he kept posting and posting. And after a while, I just reached out to him. I probably hadn't talked to him in 7-10 years. And I called him and he talked my ear off for like 2 hours about how like great, awesome, cool, and different it is. And like no money down. And you just got to do some sweat equity and be willing to talk to people and get in front of them, that sort of thing. So again, kind of duly noted, didn't take too much action on it. And then about a month or so later, he was like, hey, I'm having a meetup, an event. Would you like to come out to it? Get to know some other people in the community, that sort of thing. It wasn't anything big. It was like in the back of a chain like restaurant. They rented out a room and he was doing once a month, and they were all just kind of getting together, sitting around a table and just talking shop and talking deals. But for somebody that was new to it, you throw around, hey, I might make $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 on this. It was just kind of like, okay, now you have my interest, So that kind of got me hooked. And just talking to other people at the table, and then talking to Dave, who introduced me. He was the guy that was putting stuff on Facebook, and just like kind of figuring it out, kind of failing forward and figuring out like, how do I get in front of these people? What do I do? Back then, there weren't a lot of coaches or gurus and things like there are now, or just like these massive meetups with like 500, 1,000 people or done for you courses. A lot of it was, I think the original one I was looking up was Sean Terry back on YouTube. He was one of the original guys that put together like some coaching and everything. So just kind of took that and ran with it, just knocking on doors, leaving postcards, started to do some mailers, putting out the bandit signs, things like that. just anything and everything to get on the phone. I wasn't afraid of getting on the phone. I have a background in sales and marketing, so I've had my fair share of interesting conversations with people throughout the years. So talking to somebody on the phone is not a problem. So just that was how I got started, and then one thing led to another. Over the years, myself and a business partner built out a pretty robust team. We probably had about 12 people in office at one point, 2018, 2019. A few acquisitions managers, dispo manager, transaction coordinator, a lot of different marketing channels, and we were doing deals in Charlotte, and then we were doing deals. We really liked Dallas and Houston, Texas too, to do stuff remotely. You just get somebody on the phone, and then if they're interested, you'd get somebody to go out, walk the property, take photos, get it locked up, and sell it to local buyers there. So that's where the volume really came in over the years. And, there were months, excuse me, back then where we were doing 15, 20, sometimes close to 30 deals a month. When at the height of it, really during COVID, everything shut down for about a month or two, and then everything just like exploded. So that, was the intro, getting things going, figuring it out, and then quickly building out a team. And then over the last probably year and a half, kind of decided to scale that way back, because it's just a lot. To deal with that many people in house and that much volume, you're putting that much money out the door every month in marketing. It's a lot, and it was fun. It was a good time. We learned a lot and made a lot of connections. But also after a while, you make some money in it, and you're like, what do I really want to do with this, or what other opportunities are out there? So about a year and a half ago, kind of shrunk it way down. Business partner went off to do something else. I stuck with it, but I'm just doing here locally in Charlotte. And now just really focusing on wholesaling and, doing between 7-10 deals a month, with a much smaller team. And then I provide transactional funding for other wholesalers, investors across the country. And that's something that's really taken off and has a lot of my attention that I spend a lot of time on now.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'd like to ask you some more questions about transactional funding in just a minute, but it's interesting. Your journey is very consistent with the journey that I see with others that get into the real estate space. Yours just happened to start with you being a real estate agent, decided to become an investor, and really how you got involved is through networking, meetups, showing up, opening your mouth, failing forward, being dedicated to learning, right? And being willing just to take action, right? And that it's so interesting to me, because I see so many people that want to get into real estate, either as an active investor or as a passive investor. They're just not sure where to start, right? But in some cases, sometimes you just need to show up. You need to network with the people that are in the space to maybe learn what value you could provide, to the space. But at the end of the day, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but sometimes you just need to be willing to take action.
Yeah, no, 100%. The term "fail forward" is accurate, and action over just over analyzing and saying I have to have the perfect LLC name, or I have to have all this structure and everything. When I was first doing it, I was taking notes on sticky cards or scrap pieces of paper. Eventually, I got a CRM, all that kind of thing. But all the bells, whistles, and things like that, that's fine down the road. But initially, it's just talking to people, listening. There's no reason to reinvent the wheel. Like I don't think I've ever done anything different that hasn't been done before. But I do have an acute ear for what's working, what's really working well, and listening to people that have that experience. And I've had a lot of people along the way be like, hey, maybe avoid this, or maybe don't do this. And if they can give me a good reason why, don't waste your time on it or your money on it, then I would always listen. Right. So learning from others that have done stuff ahead of time and things before you is really the best way. And just be open. Don't think you know everything, or also you don't have to absorb everything at once. That was the thing. Early on, there are times where I try to do this or that, or different marketing or different things, or going to these different markets we didn't know much about. And usually pretty quickly it's like, all right, let's pull back. Let's like grow a little bit more organically, a little bit slower. But yeah, and I still do all the time. I mean, I watch podcasts. I follow people on Facebook or Instagram still, even after doing, hundreds and hundreds of deals. Cause you can always pull something from someone, and there's always something kind of new and evolving within the market space too. Definitely what I did 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago doesn't really work now, and that's fine. You got to kind of keep up with the times as well. So I'm just always listening, open, and just trying to stay connected with other people in this space, and especially people that are 2, 3 steps ahead of where I am and where I want to get to.
Yeah, there's a lot of lessons in terms of what you're saying here. And, I could say that the shiny new object syndrome, I could say, having your hands in multiple different pots with really no clarity or focus. So how do you personally ensure that you're, really staying dialed in, focused on, what's really moving the needle, as opposed to getting, really, diluted and, having bandwidth challenges in your life, chasing after the shiny new objects?
Oh yeah, I think you have to be pretty intentional about it. Kind of put blinders on a little bit too, because there will always be something new coming out. And again, you have to kind of filter it, process it. And usually I don't do something unless a few people I know and trust and respect have also done it, tried it out, or again, somebody at a higher level. There are people that are in 10, 15 markets and they do 30, 40 deals a month, right? And those are usually some good people to interact with and talk to. Also, what they're doing, I'm not going to be doing at a smaller stage. But I do belong to some pretty good groups. One of them is Collective Genius. And they regularly meet up throughout the week as far as just like Zoom calls, things like that. And then they have a few events a year where you go to and interact with and build some strong relationships. And then you stay in contact with those other geniuses more frequently. So just to tap into that and also give back as well too. If somebody reaches out to me and asks me what I have going on, what's working, what's been kind of iffy as far as marketing, like I'm an open book. Like I'll talk to somebody and kind of let them know what's going on. So I think just staying involved and interacting with other people that are actively doing it, pursuing it, everyone's going to have ups, downs, trials, and errors. But if you can share that with each other, I think that puts you way, way ahead than just trying to figure it all out on your own.
Yeah, it makes total sense. What are the biggest challenges facing wholesalers today, and how can they overcome them to stay competitive?
I think a huge challenge is just legislation, with more states kind of coming down and being a little bit tougher on actually being able to market a property that you don't own or do an actual assignment. I think that's becoming tougher and tougher. There's a handful of them right now, but then there's always rumors of, hey, there's going to be another 5 or 10 by the end of the year, or with MLS and licensed agents not really liking and appreciating wholesaling, I think, because of the amount of money that we can make on a deal. There's pushback. So a good thing about that is the double close. If you can't do an assignment anymore, but there's nothing against being able to buy it, turn around and sell it to somebody. Obviously, you just have to have a buyer lined up for that. But if you're in tune with what's going on with your market, who's actively buying, that sort of thing, that puts you ahead. So I think, a huge challenge right now with wholesalers and investors is the legislation, and then the not being able to just do assignments in certain markets, and what can you do to keep your business operating. And a big part of that is being able to do transactional funding or double closing.
I'm Zach Haptonstall, CEO and co-founder of Rise 48 Equity. Our goal is to help you protect and grow your wealth by investing in large multifamily apartment buildings. We do all the work as far as sourcing these large apartment buildings from the brokers, doing all of the on-site management with our vertically integrated property management company, doing all the renovations with our vertically integrated construction company. We completely rebrand the exteriors. We will renovate the interiors to our full platinum level scope, which increases the value of the asset to get that profit margin for the investor. If you'd like to learn about how you can partner with us on these exciting opportunities, and go to our website and set up a call with our team.
So for those that are unfamiliar, can you explain what double closing is and why it's such a critical need, or why there's a critical need in the real estate investment space today?
Sure. So double closing, a normal assignment is you have a contract with your seller. Let's just say it's for $120,000. And then you find a cash buyer that's going to buy it and either fix it up and put it back on the market or add it to their portfolio of rentals. And to them, it's worth 150. Right? If they buy it at 150, they put some money into it. It's still below market. It's a great deal for them. So you have a contract with your seller, which is your A to B contract, and you have a contract with your end buyer, which is your B to C contract. Kind of and I don't want to say the old way because people still do it, but the assignment is you have an agreement with your end buyer. You sign an assignment contract that says, hey, you're going to buy this off me for 150. Sometimes you disclose the $30,000 assignment. Sometimes they find out at closing. But that is like the traditional way to wholesale. You never purchase or buy the property. You just assign your rights over to the end buyer. So with legislation, sometimes they say, hey, now you can't do that. Or another factor is too, you can tell your seller all day long, to be transparent up front with them. Hey, I'm not the end buyer. I'm going to bring somebody to the table, but you will get the $120,000 at closing. And they'll say they agree. And your buyer will tell you all day long, I don't care what you make on it. I can't tell you how many times they've had a buyer say, hey, man, I hope you make as much as possible. But if you get down to the closing table and they see a 30,000, 40, 50, 60, I've had 6-figure assignments before. All of a sudden, things tend to change a little bit, right? People see that and they're like, this guy's going to make more money assigning this over to me than I am once I buy it, put the time, energy, effort, and then test the market and put it back out there. And then sometimes a seller too will say, hey, what's this assignment fee? And you're like, oh, we already previously discussed that. But then when they see the amount, they can get cold feet. So to be able to double close it is my big thing is it protects your profits as an investor, as a wholesaler. Nobody sees that you spend 10, 15, 20, 30 at the height of a big business that I had probably $50,000 a month in marketing. They don't see that. They just think you're making a quick buck. So to protect your profit, to make what you can on that deal, put it back into your marketing, put some money in your pocket. If you can double close, if you have that for 120 and you have the capital available and everything lines up where you can buy it and turn around and sell it to that end buyer on the same day. That's why they call it a double close. It happens within 24 hours. You protect yourself from the seller getting cold feet, and then you protect yourself from that end buyer who swears, hey, make what you want, but then they see $30,000 and all of a sudden they say, it's going to cost me a little more in rehab. They'll come back and try to retrade it with you, right? So if you double close, you come to if you have your own capital, great. A lot of people, if they have a lot going on, they just don't have $120,000 sitting around, or 2, 3, 400,000. We have one coming up on Friday where it's someone's doing a double close on a multifamily. They need $2 million for it. It's actually a mobile home park. So they'll come to us and they submit a request and they say, hey, I have a closing like a week out. Here's my A to B. Here's my B to C. Let me put you in contact with who's handling the closing. And we just work and we provide that capital that you need, that $120,000 at closing. You don't, as a wholesaler investor, you don't have to bring anything to the table. There's no credit check. There's no underwriting. There's no anything. It's if you have a deal, if you have a buyer, and we're working with your title company or closing attorney, and everything lines up, we'll fund it. On the day of closing, everybody signs. We fund the first deal that closes. They turn around, they sell it to the end buyer just back to back. So we provide that short-term 24-hour double closing funding. And in most cases, we do it for a point or less. So that's another thing too, is just, I understand as a wholesaler, you want to make as much as possible. And if people are hitting you up with fees and, charging you an arm and a leg or trying to get a chunk of your deal, it's tough. It hurts. You want to take that money and put it back into the business. So that's the whole thing with the double close, is being able to purchase it and then turn around and sell it on the same day. It's just everything. There's a process to it. Everything has to line up. But I know when I started, I didn't know about it, and I wish I would have. I lost a few deals. I have a classic case where somebody at the closing table, the attorney called me and it was on speaker, day of closing, and he's like, we have a situation. And I was like, what's going on? And then the seller just started talking in the background. And I was like, oh boy. So the seller said that they didn't agree to the price because I think pretty sure they saw what I was going to make on it. It was probably like 25K. They said they wanted an additional like $10,000 or they were going to walk. And I just said, hey, we already have an agreement. We're good to go. I tried to be, just try to make it work. And they got up and they left. Like they left at the closing table. They said, hey, I'm going to play the old card. I didn't know what I was getting into. Eventually we had to go back and forth and figured it out. But that was a huge eye-opening moment for me. And I found out about double closing a little bit later on, but earlier on, I wouldn't have had the capital to do it regardless. And when I started to do it, I just reached out to some private money people here in Charlotte. It was just a clunky process. Like guys are on the golf course. They're like, yeah, I'll get to the bank after this 18 holes and I'll fund it. And I'm like, we're supposed to fund like today. Like you don't care, but my seller cares. My buyer cares. Like, can we make this a little bit more serious? Right. Or they'd be like, I'll do it, but for 5 points. And so they want their chunk because they're not doing volume. They're not doing a lot. They're like, how can I make this money work for me as much as possible? So after doing that for a while, I just kind of came to the conclusion, like, let me look at this as a wholesaler standpoint, an investor standpoint. How can I make it a super smooth process where it's the same thing every single time? When somebody does a deal with me, they're like, oh, that was, I filled out a form, had to do a few things. Most of the communication was between Pete's team and the closing company. That was fine. I'll do a bunch and, refer other people. So it's the same process every time. And then that fee of being a point or less for the most part, just to make it as smooth and as attractive as possible for other wholesalers, with me, myself being an investor wholesaler and being like, hey, if I had that process a few years ago, I would have gone back to that person every single time.
Yeah, so that makes sense, Peter. What would you say to that investor that's not ever invested either as a wholesaler or as a fix and flipper? Somebody that has interest in getting into real estate, they want to do it on the active side. They're maybe not ready to scale into that duplex or fourplex or small multi, but they want to buy a distressed property, they want to renovate, or they want to buy something and maybe wholesale it. What type of advice maybe would you give to that individual that really has no experience, on the active real estate ownership side?
I would start out with, if I were to go to YouTube right now and look somebody up, I really like, and this isn't creative finance or anything like that. I don't really dabble in that. I know there's a whole communities and everything around that, but I really like Brent Daniels. He's out of Arizona. He's very straightforward, very, very good. And he just has a Rolodex of, you go to his site and you can go back probably 5, 6, 7 years ago. And it's just like wholesaling 101. You could probably put in YouTube wholesaling 101 with Brent Daniels, and he'd give you a quick breakdown and an idea of like, hey, this is what to do when you're just starting. If I were to say today, just go out there and figure something out, I would go around, drive around, they call it driving for dollars, and just go in neighborhoods and in houses and everything that look abandoned, dilapidated, boarded up, that sort of thing. You could go there, literally get some addresses. You can go to a site like Locate Plus and some other sites where you can skip trace and find who the owner is. You can look up under the tax record who the owner is, but to get a phone number. And then just be brave enough to make a call and just say, hey, you don't tell them I drove by your house and it looks terrible. You just say, I'm an investor in the area, calling around looking for my next project. Would you be interested in selling 123 Main Street? And you're going to get a lot of people that hang up. You're going to get a lot of people that say 4-letter words, nasty stuff to you. And you just have to have a backbone. You just have to in one ear, out the other. But after a while, you'll get somebody that says, yeah, I've been wanting to sell that property for a long time. They may not spill their guts and tell you everything, but they'll be like, okay, what would you offer? I don't know. I haven't really thought about it. What's the process? That sort of thing. And then some people, you just give them room to talk and they'll just pour everything out and you'll say, hey, let me do this. Let me talk to my partner about it and I'll get back to you. So just get some information. And then if you've got somebody local or somebody to take a deal to, people could reach out to me as well too. Again, I just do it here in Charlotte within like an hour radius now, but I've done it in a lot of other markets. Just go to somebody that's like an authority in the area. There's always meetups. There's always RIA meetings. There's always somebody that's hosting something once a week, once a month. And if you've done the work and you've gone out and you found a property and you've talked to somebody and that person showed interest, if you take that to somebody, if somebody calls me up today and says, hey, I have this property, this person's super interested, do you help me? I would definitely help them. If they say, hey, I haven't called them yet, but if the property looked bad, I'd be like, all right, go on this website, find this number, call it. Got to do a little bit of the homework to get people's interest. But I think just going to meetups, talking to people, going online, check out Brent Daniels. There's tons of other people out there, and literally just Google and YouTube Wholesaling 101. I think that gets you started, and then you build on it from there.
Yeah, the information's all out there, right, for people to find, identify, and honestly, it's there for free if you're willing to search for it. And certainly, network with others that are already in the space today, to learn, from them. So really looking back, Peter, on your kind of, journey, what's one piece of advice that you'd give to aspiring investors that want to build a thriving business like the one that you've built?
Just be persistent. There's still times, I've been doing this for a long time, hundreds of deals. You would think by now it's proof of concept and everything, but there's still times where I doubt myself, right? And I'm like, is this going to work? Is the market changing? Is whatever going on? I'm in one of the best markets in America, and it will continue to be that way. And there are still times where I'm like, why am I not getting more leads and opportunities? But if I stick with it, if I'm persistent, that's when things work out. And when I first started, it took probably 4, 5, 6 months before I got a deal. And I had 2 or 3 that were supposed to happen. And then certain things like the title was messy, or one time a seller just backed out and didn't show up to closing, and we're going to make like $25,000 on it. And that was a gut punch. I mean, when you're not used to that and making that, and within a few weeks of work, and we're going to take it and put it into marketing and do all this stuff, it didn't work out. But it was just like, all right, that wasn't fun, but like stick with it. I just think persistence and action is more valuable than, like I said before, all the bells, whistles, everything like that. If you drove around, took down some addresses, made some phone calls, eventually it may not be your first, 5th, 10th, 50th, 100th call, but eventually somebody is going to be like, hey, I'm glad you called. And I know we didn't, the first deal I ever did, I think probably made around like 20,000. That was great. And then that first person, I asked them, because I had heard from this on watching some of Sean Terry's stuff. He said, always ask if they have another property. You'd be amazed that people may have 2 or 3 more, and they just, even though you just did a deal with them, they may be waiting for someone else to call, or they forget to mention it. So the first deal we did, as we were walking through it with some interested buyers, I was just talking to the guy outside, and I was like, do you have any more? And he had 2 other properties. So my first deal took a while, but then it turned into 3 deals that was probably close to about $100K worth of profit. So just, that would have never happened if I would have given up and just been like, this isn't fun, right? Like, this is a lot of work, getting up at 4 or 5 in the morning, putting out bandit signs, making calls, having people cuss you out. Like, you just get through that, and then you get a deal. And then once you get that deal, you're like, okay, I can do this. I'll do another. And I mentioned the 20K because that was great. And that's still a chunk of change, but there are some people that within a couple of months, their first deal, they make 75, 80K. And I mean, for a lot of people, that's life-changing. And that's something that you can then grow off of. And then maybe you can pay for a bigger course or get some one-on-one mentorship, right? But just the action and the persistence side of it, I know it sounds kind of simple in a way, but that is the biggest thing, is just sticking with it and just not giving up until you talk to somebody and you get that deal and you prove to yourself that it's a real thing. Once you get that, I mean, there's kind of no turning back.
Yeah. Those efforts absolutely have a compounding effect on one another. But the important thing is to stick with it, be persistent, stay consistent, and really, take those actionable steps. I really appreciated your expertise on wholesaling and transactional funding. What might be 1 or 2 different ways that our listening audience can connect with you to learn more about what you're up to?
I can leave my information with you. People can call me directly. I answer that even on my website right now. paying a lot for Google ads and whatnot. And when people call and they're blown away that it's my actual number, it comes right to my number, because I like talking to anybody and everybody while I can. Hopefully one day it'll get to be so much, there's so many requests, well, I'll have to have someone else, but they can call me directly. They can text me directly. And then I'll give you my socials and things like that. I have a lot of people reach out to me, DM me and ask me questions and that sort of thing. And even if you don't have a deal, even if you just have some more questions, it's about 50-50 where people reach out to me and they either have a deal or they're like, hey, I'm working on one right now. Never done a double close. What's the process? In a 5-10 minute conversation, they're educated about it. And once they do get it under contract, they move forward. That's a huge piece too, is I just think a lot of people don't know that much about double closing or transactional funding. And once they find out about it, they're super excited and they're like, hey, any deal over 25, 30K, I'll use you, right? Or, oh, I wish I would have known about this 6 months ago. I lost a deal because of a large assignment fee. But I'm an open book. I'll leave you with all my contact info, that sort of thing. And people just can reach out to me, and happy to talk to them at any point in time.
Sounds good. We'll go ahead and add those links in the show notes for the episode. Peter, again, really appreciate your time today and the value that you brought our audience.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. And listening audience, thank you again for joining another episode of The Freedom Point. We look forward to having you join us on the next episode.
Thank you for hanging out with us today and for listening to the Freedom Point podcast, powered by Starting Point Capital. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on this show should be considered financial advice. Before making any financial decision, please consult with a professional. This show is copyrighted by the Freedom Point podcast. Written permissions must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting. If you're interested in connecting, you can find contact information at startingpointcapital.com.